So I was thinking about one of the stories in the Gord the Rogue collection of short stories called Knight Errant, and the story is called The Five Dragon Bowl. And it brings up an interesting idea when it comes to ancestor worship in the China equivalent of the world of Greyhawk. And I wanted to tease out some ideas about that today on Greyhawk Grognard. So the story, The Five Dragon Bowl, in this book, Knight Errant by Gary Gygax, sadly out of print, but you can find them here and there, is one of my favorites because it brings in a number of different NPCs. Digwell Biffson, who was connected to the elf Melf. He was his henchman, and a couple of other very interesting NPCs. The basic rundown of the story is that there is a merchant from distant Suhfang, which is the Greyhawk equivalent of ancient China, the Celestial Imperium, as it's called in the Dragon Annual 1 map. And he's evil, and Gord and Chert and one or two others have to go there and basically take him out. Is the essentials of it. And what I found interesting, though, is some of the tidbits about the Celestial Imperium of Suhfang, which Gygax put into the book. So I'm just going to read a passage or two, and then I'm gonna kind of riff on it. So this is Scholar Yao. Or Magus Yao, who is the evil guy from Suhfang, and he says, allow me to introduce myself, sirs. I am Magus Yao, a dealer in antiquities and rarities. If I may be so bold, I am also a scholar of some repute on the far west and its metaphysical teachings. My honored father actually came from the Suhfang kingdom, a place virtually unknown to the Flonesse, but a veritable wonder amongst all lands, I assure you. So he's introducing himself. He's a second generation emigre, essentially, from Suhfang. Well, what is the names are a little bit fungible because of copyright. They're called one thing in one place and another thing in another, and the fans come up with their own thing. So I'm going to probably be going through different iterations of the name. The next thing is, eventually they go to his shop. They glom onto to the fact that he's the evil one and not to be trusted. And then where is it here? Yao summons some undead. Here we go. Here we go. Magus Yao was somewhere among these things now, exhorting them on. They're basically zombies and skeletons, that kind of thing. On, dear ancestors, faithful guardians of Imperial Suhfang in the decadent East, which is the Flonesse. These foul men would desecrate our temple and steal the holy relics you placed in my trust. Send them to gibber and beg in the nethermost regions of Hades for the glory of dark Nerull. Which was really an interesting little bit. We'll get back to that as well. And then at the end, the cleric that is with them turns the undead, saying, back to your graves, monstrous unrealities, he chanted forcefully, your unclean spirits to the nether places, your evil intentions withering in the light of burning truth, yada yada yada. As if struck by a hammer, the recovering things were spun and turned about simultaneously, reeling and tottering. They retreated from the cleric, heading towards the recess that Yao had called them from. And then Yao says, at the last attempt, the staff simply turned into dry splinters. With a shriek of hatred, the man darted and interposed himself between the retreating undead and the recess towards which they were heading. Turned back and attack, he exhorted them, you must obey me, am I not the supreme one? Before Yao could say more, two of the rotted corpses had him. He was dragged along in their retreat, howling and shrieking unintelligible things in his sing-song speech. So That's what I think. There's a lot in there that you can play with, literally. First of all, is the obvious fact that Nerull is worshipped by Yao, and he's using Nerull to sort of inspire his undead ancestors. So that tells us that Nerull is known in the Celestial Imperium in some way or another, in some maybe under another name or something like that. But Nerull is known there because if it was just a question of Yao, because he was raised in the Flanaess, he took up the worship of Nerull, Nerull being the evil undead, the evil god of death in the Flanaess. If it was just a question of he had picked up the worship of Nerull, then the ancestors wouldn't care, and he wouldn't have used Nerull's name to command them. So that's an interesting thing in and of itself, is that some of those common deities that we see in the Flanaess have made their way out as far, at least, as the Celestial Imperium. So that is a really interesting thing. The other thing I find very interesting is the notion that the undead that he's commanding are his ancestors. He said, "On noble ancestors." So it's his own family lineage that he is using to attack his enemies, and he's risen them from death as undead. So that links in really interestingly with what we know in the real world, traditional folk religion in China, especially in the south of China, does have a lot of ancestor worship involved in it. So you can postulate that the certain regions, at least, of Suhfang are focused on this ancestor worship, and there's maybe even an undead culture in there. When they in Suhfang actually do their rites to propitiate the ancestors and venerate the ancestors and so forth, the ancestors are actually literally present when they do that, and I love that idea. That their ancestors are literally present and visible and with physicality, and walking around and so forth. So it's a great blending of the idea of the real world cultural phenomenon of ancestor worship and the D&D expectations of the D&D game, in terms of, well, if something is dead and it's still moving around, it is undead and thus can be turned by clerics and all this other stuff. So I love those kinds of intersections and twisting the real world stuff to make it fit into the D&D paradigm. Is both a respectful treatment of it, usually, of the original material, but it's also a way to put a unique spin and twist on it, because you're not just porting it in and dumping it in where and whatever. You're actually changing it a little bit here and there to make it conform to the expectations of the game, and I love that can happen, and I think it actually enriches both the game and the material that's being imported. So I can even extrapolate this. When it comes to the imperial family of Suhfang, what if there's a whole line of emperors, perhaps, of emperor liches, maybe, or emperor ghosts or something, that stretches back to the foundation of the empire, of the Celestial Imperium. Or even better, maybe there's just one emperor. Maybe the emperor who founded Suhfang is still there on the throne as some sort of undead. And this could go back thousands of years. So it's kind of a twist on what happens later on in the Flanaess, in the Great Kingdom of Aerde, where Ivid IV turns into an undead, gets turned into an undead and is ruling from his throne. That there is regarded as an abomination. But in Suhfang, in the Celestial Imperium, it's the normal state of affairs, or one way or the other, whether or not it's this lineage of ancestor undead going back to the earliest days of the kingdom, who could be called upon for advice and wisdom and power and so forth, or it could be a single emperor has ruled the throne for a couple of thousand years, because he is this undead, he is the ancestor of the entire imperial family. There could be this entire huge imperial bureaucracy, imperial family, the court, if you will, is all descended from this one undead figure who is still on the throne after all these years. It's a powerful image, and it also could lead to a lot of intrigue as some of the younger members of the family might decide, oh, I don't want to, no one will ever be on the throne except our great ancestor. Maybe it's time for that to change. So that could be the spark for some rebellions in different places and so forth. Maybe some provinces of the empire, are horrified by the fact that they're being ruled by some undead monster, and they break away, and then they have to be brought back in, and there's wars and so. So I think either of these ideas really could turn what could be just a ho-hum, oh, it's fantasy China, into a whole different thing where it's based on Chinese folklore, but it's also got this D&D twist on it because it's using undead in the way that D&D expects undead to be used. So anyway, just some thoughts. I mean, I spun this out of just a couple of paragraphs in a short story from 30 years ago. So, take it for what you will. Hope you enjoyed my little speculations here. Just a reminder that folks who are supporters on my Patreon get to see these videos 2 weeks before the rest of the world. So if you would like to be a supporter, it could be as low as $2 a month. Please hit the link below. And other than that, I hope you have a great day. Hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think in the comments. How would you treat the undead and the ancestors in the celestial Imperium of Suhfang? And I will talk to you later. Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.